My background is in researching the ways in which politicians engage with their communities, the ways in which people are able to engage with their politicians. And what I want to do today, in a few minutes, is give you a framework as legislators for understanding why some of your constituents will engage with you and why others won't, and what you might do about that. So the problem, I think, that we all know happens in every democracy. Doesn't matter whether that democracy is in the United States, in Australia, in the United Kingdom, or here in India. Some voices are very loud. And as a politician, you hear these very loud voices of people telling you what they need. But if you have a large number of constituents, how do you hear those voices that are not loud, that are not able to talk? And what we were interested in our research was to try and understand why it is that some people are very loud, but many people, the majority of people, the silent majority, are not heard in a democracy. And what do we do about it? And we came up with this model which we call CLEAR. And CLEAR stands for five words: can do, like to, enable to, ask to, responded to. And I just want to take you through that model quickly. This is based on a large amount of research, both our own research and the literature that exists in relation to public participation and political engagement. So this synthesizes what would be a whole PhD in political science into 5 minutes. So forgive me if I skip forward a little bit quickly on some things, but hopefully you'll understand what I'm talking about. So let me talk to you about C first of all. Do your constituents have the resources? Can they participate? And what the literature talks about here is that those who are better educated, have knowledge about a particular issue, and so on, are much more likely to engage than those who lack the education, lack the confidence even to engage. So this is something which political institutions have to really focus on in terms of can the public engage. And I was really taken by what Srimati Supriya said in relation to how she was involved in women's empowerment particularly. We know that women in most democracies are less likely to engage than men. Australia actually is a bit of an exception in that respect. The second issue we have is like to, and that is, do your political institutions actually encourage people to engage? Or do people trust those bodies, the politics in which you're engaged in? You need to think carefully about this, because where people feel attached to an institution, and I'm really struck by how in India people really feel attached to their democracy aspect though, and this is where we get to the things that you as politicians can do. Those first two things are sort of statewide, nationwide issues that need to be engaged with. The next three things are things that you as individual MLAs, MLCs can do to reach out to your constituents. The first is, the first, or E, enable to, is do they have the mechanisms that support engagement? Do you provide the opportunities, the structures for them to engage? Let me give you some examples of that. If you are engaging farmers, do you ask those farmers to engage in the middle of the day, particularly when they are planting or bringing in crops or dealing with livestock? Or do you engage those farmers in forums and times that they are able to engage? So do you think carefully about, if I want to engage farmers, what time do I do that? The same is true with women's empowerment. It's great to have women's empowerment, but if you say, and all the women have to come at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday evening to the city centre, to the centre of the city, travel 2 hours each way to come and engage, are they likely to engage? No, they're not. You need to engage where they are going to be to provide the opportunities for women to engage. Young people, if you want to engage young people, you have to go to the colleges, the schools where they are. You can't expect them to come to you all the time. So thinking about the mechanisms of engagement are really important, and trying to think about who it is that you want to engage, whose voice you want to hear, and therefore how you go to where they are is really important. The next two things are really obvious but surprisingly missing in the way in which politicians seek to engage quite often, certainly in the countries that we studied. A, do you ask them to engage? Do you actually invite them to engage, or do you just provide opportunity and expect them to want to engage? Because when we talk about those voices that are less heard, whether we're talking about women's empowerment, whether we're talking about people from backward castes or whatever, then do you actually ask them to engage, or do you just ignore them and hope that they will engage when they want to? If you ask people, it's amazing how often people want to get engaged but lack the confidence. So if you go out and ask them, you literally knock on their door, stand in their home, whatever, and say, I want to hear your voice, you will find that they will actually respond much quicker. Which leads to the last point I have to make, which is responded to. Because if you want to get continuous engagement from people, it's not just about listening to them, it's not just about asking them to engage, but it's then telling them about how you've heard them, what you're going to do about it. That doesn't mean to say that you have to agree with them. Just because you've asked somebody doesn't mean that you have to then do what they ask you to do. But what it does require you to do is to engage with the issue that they've asked for. If they've engaged with an issue, you need to explain to them what you're going to do about that, and how and why and how you're going to deal with it when you go back to the Legislative Assembly, to Parliament, wherever it is. And you have to say to them, I am not going to deal with this issue, but I will deal with that issue. So, can do, like to, enable to, asked to, responded to. The way in which you engage with citizens is clear, and that is the model that I want to give you to take away, to just think, next time you're thinking about how do I get other people's voices into the assembly, think about those 5 areas. The acronym really helps you to think about it, and think about what you can do, particularly in relation to enabling people to engage, asking them to engage, and responding to them. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.